Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. It's me again, it's Alex Whiteley, and today I'm talking to a group of guys that I've been dying to. As a show, we've been dying to get you guys on the show for a while. I think Shane started broke the ice.
February, I think.
February, yeah, and then all the world went crazy. So I'm glad that we've finally managed to put this together. But I'm speaking to Amanda Jones and Robert Douglas from Shropshire Supports Refugees. Thank you so much for coming to sit with us.
Thank you for asking us.
That's us. It's me. There's no other biscuiteers here today. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. Honestly, we love it.
Now, with this show, Of course, I absolutely support what you want to do, but I want to talk a bit about sort of because you deal with refugees and there are languages and words that people use that create stigmas when it comes to people coming into the country. This has been covered from day one on the Shrewsbury Biscuit with Simon Bell, who came on to talk to us about rhetoric. He's amazing.
He's one of our volunteers.
Is he?
Yeah,
I'm not surprised.
great.
Not surprised because. There are certain ways people react when they hear about people coming into their country. They get very protective, and I want to clear some of that up today. I think that's fair, isn't it?
We'll do our best.
Yeah. So I'll just explain to Amanda that we are very transparent on the show, and she said, well. When I get asked how I started with this, I kind of ramble on a bit, but it's really important to do so because you need to add a bit of context to why you do this and where you started from. So if she said you need to put your hand up and stop me at a certain point. So if
please do.
If the listeners do hear me being a little bit abrupt and going, stop, that's why I've been asked.
Throws a book at my head, I'll let you all know.
And I thought I'd let you know as well that I'm just literally dropped to 1 bar on my H6. So if I do have to stop at some point and we change the batteries, we'll just have to do that.
That's okay.
This is just a warning. So, Amanda.
Lovely. What a lovely, authentic way to start the interview. And I am a massive fan of that. And we have been interviewing people this week for someone, and I've started off just like that. Look, it's chaotic. There's no structure here, but this is us. And exactly. You're in for a penny, in for a pound. So, thank you.
I just interviewed a guy, Lee, from a new taxi service, Now Cars, that just rolled into town. And he was like, he's a big guy. He was like, oh, I'm really nervous. I'm really scared. I was like, just sit down. We'll turn the mics on. That's all it is. It's just a conversation. Imagine we're in a pub or a cafe or something. That's what this is. Yeah. That's what I like it to be.
So, I totally get how people are interested in how and why I started doing this, because I like to tell the story so that people feel that it's completely in their reach to do something similar in whatever area they're interested or passionate about. And this is how the world changes, isn't it? Grassroots people on the ground deciding what matters and what's important, and then holding up an umbrella to see who else feels the same.
Yes.
And then you move it on from there. And everything we've done has been very organic, and it has been in reaction to and in response to either requests or offers from the public. So I started back in 2015 when I was at home with a 2-year-old and watching the godforsaken news, and it was all at the time about the Syrian war and the stuff going on in the Middle East. And I kind of, you just get numb and immune to that, don't you?
Yes.
As you grow up, British news is just full of it, so you just don't pay much attention to it. Eventually you just go, it's not my problem.
I think the news got kind of careless. I'm used to that kind of is rhetoric the right word, but the behaviour of foreigners, especially since I met my wife. Everybody on the biscuit will know my wife is from Colombia. She's not from around here, so sometimes she'll be treated differently, or you'll mention to someone my wife is Colombia and they'll be like, oh, Pablo Escobar, cocaine, and also, and it's horrible. My wife has nothing to do with drugs, nothing. She hates it, right? So there is, but the news, they kind of started using words that you wouldn't normally see in the news, like tidal wave and the migration type. They must have opened up a thesaurus and gone, what words can we use to describe this? And they were kind of putting ideas in people's heads, weren't they?
Absolutely, and they continue to do so. But I don't believe that stuff is by accident.
No,
I think it's there's a lot more serious stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know about. But what goes out on the news and what doesn't go out on the news is very dictated by somebody somewhere, and it's across the board, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I hadn't paid too much attention to it. For some reason, I saw footage that really got me, and I think being fresh mum,
new mum,
hormonal, it really got to me, and that was footage of seeing thousands of people walking on motorways in Europe, dragging children, little children, babies, old people, carrying their parents with everything they had in the world in their hands. And I just remember thinking, God, I could never get my son to walk across a field, let alone across Europe and across the world. How are they doing that? I felt so sorry for them. And, I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't just opening their doors as they were passing and going, come and stay in our spare room. It would just be the most logical thing for me, because I'm a little bit naive like that. Of course, it's far more complicated than that. When you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people turning up in a city, I think they must have been on their way to Germany or something. I think it was in some European country. But it also just really brought it home to me how close this was now, and that possibly there would be something we could do, to help. If it's over in the Middle East, or if it's in Africa, or if it's the other side of the world, you do feel powerless to a certain degree. Like, what can we do from here? But when it's coming to your doorstep, wow, I just felt like I really wanted to do something. So I went slightly mad and spent days and weeks researching everything I could do and what I couldn't do from Shrewsbury. And obviously very little from where I was. But I found out that they were all collecting in Calais. So there was at the time about 10,000 people in Calais. And there was children and families, and it was in mud and squalor, and the police were being vile and tear gassing them and really allowing far right.
They were stuck behind a barricade for days, weren't they? They've just been hit with rubber bullets and stuff.
Oh man, inhumane. And so I thought, Calais not that far. I know what I can do. I could probably raise some money and take some stuff down there. I'd like to maybe get a caravan for one of the families that was living in mud. And then I just spent another couple of weeks and months researching how I was going to do that. And then I looked at my own sort of circles of resources and friends, and I knew a lot of artists and a lot of musicians, and I had a little bit of experience of working, in events and pubs and stuff like that. So I put on a fundraiser at the Loopy Shrew, and it was a real hit. There was hundreds of people turned out, and I couldn't believe the response that I got from the local businesses and the local people, really, who all wanted to be a part of it. So the prizes were extraordinary for the raffle and the auctions, and I think we had 3 bands playing, and we had a magician walking around doing table magic, and the tickets came with a free drink, and it was just a lovely night. And we raised £3,500, which was amazing in one night, wasn't it? But great. That just gave me a sense of how much passion there was in the town, really, because I was inundated with offers, and still am to this day, inundated with offers. So at the time, there was probably 30 of me and my friends that did that. And now there's 1,090-something people in the Facebook group that I started. And, of course, since then I've turned it into an organisation. And through reacting to need, like I said, requests, need, gaps in services and offers from organisations, individuals, businesses, it's grown to quite a size, really, which I literally can't manage it on my own anymore. So I have to apologise now to all professionals, volunteers, potential volunteers, and anyone who's ever worked with me or ever will work with me. I have been so slow in the last since lockdown, really. It's been a case of everything has slowed right down. So it's picking up again now, though. Yeah,
I definitely... I understand that, because that's what's happened with the biscuit. That's why I had to get everybody in. That's Shane and everybody, because it's too much.
It was too much, yeah. I mean, I had to also work from home with a 6-year-old right up until September. And so you go home ed and then run an organisation. So it was very difficult to start anybody up new stuff or or follow through on any new projects. It was really just sort of treading water, really, but it's all going now. So that was a real whistle-stop. I really tried to make that quick. Whistle-stop tour on how I started off just with a good intention, and I've now ended up with an organisation that I'm really proud of, and we're just formalising things and going to the next level. So,
I mean, I joined Amanda about a year ago. And I can honestly say it's the best thing I've ever done in my life.
High five.
So, I've got a 30-year career in education, but this is the best job I've ever done.
Oh, that's good.
I came on board because I found it incredibly disempowered as a citizen, watching what was going on, what could I do? And the way that government policy has gone over the last 15 years or so in terms of Britain having been what I felt was a very welcoming country to something that I don't recognise anymore. I really don't. And, the whole Brexit debate has shaped a whole sense of
fear.
Fear of other cultures, other people, and it just I felt so incredibly disempowered, and I wanted to find
that's beautiful.
A route that I could do something to push against that and say no, this is not where we should be going. We should be welcoming people into this country. We should be helping them. We should be embracing them and embracing that whole cultural mix that we have a history of, and it seems to me the barriers are just going up, and we've got to fight against that. Really have got to fight against it.
I think it's really important, and I don't necessarily have anything against people that have negative feelings about refugees and foreigners, because I feel like these are people that don't understand. They don't understand that they're in a position where they don't quite see all of the aspects to the story. They've got their friends saying this, their family saying that, and they've got no choice but to feel a certain way, to think a certain way. But I think if we could find a way to reach out to people and actually show them what's actually happening. Like, there's a difference between an immigrant and a refugee. A refugee is someone that's literally running from their life, and when you hear the words that they were using to describe this armada of people just moving through Europe, I can't remember some of the words, but I think we've covered it before on the show. Tidal wave, and
just negative connotations.
Invasion, all these sort of things.
They shouldn't be allowed to do that. There should be. You get into real big trouble in a business if you're discriminatory or racist. And how come they get allowed to do that? It's just shocking. There's no regulations, is there?
Yeah, and this isn't a term I use to offend anybody that does feel that way, because if you do feel that way and you would like to sort of understand more, then please do so. But I describe it to squirrels protecting their nuts, right? Yeah. Because it's just an easy way of describing it, because that's what it is. That essentially what it is, the fear of losing out because other people are coming,
Oh, well, I'm quite interested in psychology, always have been, and there's a certain mindset, and it fits very well with the capitalist system. And unfortunately, certain parties hold a flag up to it. And it's this me and mine and that's it. Look after myself. Look after number one, and hoard things, hoard money, hoard houses, hoard resources. It's all mine, more. And it's the capitalist system. And it's not working, is it? Because there's now billions of people that are in poverty across the world, whilst there's just a very few people in a nice, comfortable situation. And then you've got the really tiny 1% who are just taking the, to be quite fair. And so this is the reason why all of this is happening. There is an extraordinarily unfair distribution of wealth and food and resources in a world where there's room for everybody. Yes. There's enough stuff for everybody. There's enough of everything for everybody. And there's great big areas of countries that aren't even populated, but because of the capitalist system and the way that we've all been forced to gravitate towards cities and large areas where commerce and production is going on. Long gone are the healthy communities, the villages that look after each other, that make sure everybody's got a role and everybody's got a purpose and everybody looks after each other and then they share. That is the only way of life that looks after everybody. And so whether you call them a migrant or an immigrant or a refugee or an asylum seeker, to me they are all human beings with the exact same desires and needs as we've got, to be healthy and happy and fulfilled, and have our children healthy and happy and fulfilled, and our parents looked after.
Not be shot at.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. less of the shooting, less of the starving, less of the being exploited. I mean, slavery is bigger now than it ever was 200 years ago when it was legal. There are millions of people. I think there is an estimate of something like 33 million people in slavery today across the world. That's usually an underestimation. So, the same as the amount of people that are registered as drowning in the Mediterranean when they come across here, it's probably a tiny fraction of what the real figure is. The global injustices are the cause of what is happening. And if you or I were born in a country, or even in a part of this country, where poverty was rife, where there was not enough for anyone, then you would do anything you could to do a better life for yourself and your family, wouldn't you? And so when I see anybody with a face and two arms or even one arm, doesn't matter. A human being is a human being. Yes. And hue being the word for the way we measure light, and being doing, isn't it? And inhabiting this body. So that's what we are. We are beings of light, walking around trying to do the best for our family and for ourselves. And so because unfortunately there will always be people that want to exploit others, the system has been geared towards that now. It's a perfect system because us consumers at the end of the road, we don't bother looking into too much about how our products are created.
We all live in our bubbles, don't we? Everybody
exactly.
lives in a bubble.
It's starting to get better, but yeah. You cannot separate all of that and the consumerism that's been going on from what's happened. And wars or not wars are commercially led. Wars are money making industries, yeah. And the people behind the wars, the people that feed them, the people that create them, that stir up all that problems, the arms dealers, the oil magnates, the people that are really benefiting from these wars will continue to do that because it does them, it does them good, it does their businesses good. So wars will never end, unfortunately, but people can rise up against it and act like human beings and help each other out regardless of what's going on. So
it's a troubling situation because we had Phil Gittins on the show a few weeks ago and we were talking about peace and conflict and how you deal with these situations. And I was asking these questions that I felt like I had no right asking him because, like, if he had the answers, if anybody had the answers, then we wouldn't be at war. We wouldn't be doing this. It's
not people that go to war, though, is it?
No, of course it's not. No. It's a terrible situation, and I think there's always been a stigma in the UK from what pop culture and movies and growing up and seeing all these sort of things around, phrases that I use that you kind of grow up with, like, the corner shop was always called the pea shop, I'm not going to say it.
I had a gollywog.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Actually, there's no other word for them.
And there's these things that you're brought up around, but that was kind of, it's not accepted. I don't accept it now. But even back then, they weren't using it as hateful. Like, Facebook is a tool for, like, when there was that the guy that drowned in the tunnel, because I think he was in the channel, the English channel. I think he was trying to get away from the UK or something. I don't even think he was trying to come in. And the hate.
Oh,
the hate. Honestly, I nearly cried. Honestly, and I had to take a break from Facebook because I saw all this and I was just like you, Robert. I can't do anything. What can I do?
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and although things were difficult, I don't feel it was as intolerant as it feels now. I don't think the language I mean, you're right. I think social media has made it so much easier for people to voice their opinions in ways that just couldn't be voiced then. But I didn't feel quite that it was more as intolerant in terms of that cultural mix. And we talked a lot about. So, I worked in education, and we talked a lot about multiculturalism and how did we bring a multicultural element into the curriculum, and that was very much talked about. And then the national curriculum came in, and that sort of began to close it down a little bit. But I don't know, I always felt, as I was going through my working life and growing up, that it was a tolerant society I was living in. But
I think it depends on where you come from.
I don't quite feel that anymore. But
what your own personal experiences were.
Does.
I was oblivious. I was oblivious of anything. I mean, I'm quarter Chinese for a start. My dad's Chinese, half Chinese. So I grew up in that multicultural sort of environment, not questioning anything. Never faced any prejudice or racism, and then went to live in Italy for 4 years, where I went to an international school. So it was 30-something different nationalities that went to that school. So I'm one of those people that used to not see colour and used to not really register anything different. It was just normal for me. And now, since the Black Lives Matters movement, it's become obvious why that's not okay either. And actually, it's only in very recent years that I've realised why that's not okay. And I think what happened in the 80s in particular was that it was out of our sight and out of our mind, but it was still going on. And our country has welcomed waves of people in different times through different circumstances. In the 50s, I think it was the drive to bring over Afro-Caribbean people, wasn't it? And then in the 60s, there was a drive to bring over Indian people. And I was too young to notice all of that, to be honest. And then I think there was a bit of a gap in the 80s where they basically, our country focused on demolishing other people's countries and kept it out of our sight. And, it wasn't reported that much, or it was just...
It was Kosovo and stuff in the 90s and stuff like that. Kosovo and...
it was all going on, but not necessarily in our country. Yeah. And then now I think it's the first time in recent decades where we've had another wave of incoming people through, a planned programme. I don't know if there was one in the 80s. I don't remember it because I was too busy clubbing and having a good time in my capitalist, beautiful first world country where, you don't go, without. So I was oblivious. And but I'm pretty sure the world was still in a horrible position.
But this is what I was talking about earlier, isn't it? Is that, there are people out there that don't understand, and they will just gravitate to the language that they're surrounded by. So, like you said, you looked at how you looked at things, and then you realise, actually, maybe there's a different way of doing things, and that's what people need to do. I think, it's not, you're not wrong. No. Okay, you maybe have done things wrong, but
you can always learn, can't you? And I've seen how. I think we've all seen recently how not addressing other people's racism, like living in our own little bubble of, I'm all right and my mates aren't racist, so I'm not really going to bother looking around because I'm not feeling like being an activist right now, it doesn't affect me. That isn't acceptable anymore, because look at what's happened. It's just ballooned, hasn't it? When people have been distracted by bright lights and funny television programs and getting the latest gadget and gaming and all these things that are great distractions, stop us looking at what's really going on underneath. And I don't think that's a coincidence either.
I mean, it's, it is a distraction. It is a distraction, and sometimes I kind of have to have that kind of distraction. Not the gaming or anything. I don't really play on.
We all have distractions. It's okay.
I get stuck into the podcast and the editing sort of thing, because I think when it comes to social, I would love to just delete Facebook.
Yes,
I would love to, but I can't because everything runs on that now.
It's the same as me.
But I have to take a break sometimes. because it gets a bit too much. I don't really watch the news because it's not good for me.
I had to stop receiving updates from all of the organisations and groups that I was getting updates from when I was doing all my research, because they're so harrowing. Horrible, harrowing footage of people being treated worse. Well, no, I'm a vegetarian, so I think animals get treated bad as well, but no different to how we treat animals, just treating them like herds of people that we don't care about, that don't have emotions. The things I saw, I'm not even going to be able to say on this podcast because they're so horrific. And all I ended up doing was giving myself literally a condition, I knackered my nervous system up, and I'm still dealing with that, really.
Hard stuff to see, yeah.
It was awful. And I'm a sensitive person, hence doing what I'm doing and being a vegetarian. I do those things because I get affected very easily by other people's suffering. And so I had to stop all that and just link up with the organisations across the country and the world that are doing something positive. And that's the good thing, because, you've both said, what can we do? And that's the feeling that a lot of people have. And then I think an organisation like ours holds that umbrella up and goes, well, you can do this, And the first thing I did was, well, you can collect clothes, you can raise money, you can bring toys for people that haven't got anything, you can do fundraisers, you can offer your services, you can offer your time, you can spread the word, you can start your own thing up. There's so many little things.
Or even just start a place where you offer, like, a place where a certain language and behaviour is acceptable, and you can kind of talk about these issues. I mean, that's just as important, because it might help people understand the situation a bit better.
Absolutely. And it is, like you said, it's education and it's ignorance, and it's not... If the only source of information that you get is what's on the front pages of the newspapers or what comes up on your television, then you are missing 90% of the actual real stuff that's happening in the world. I get the Positive News magazine I think it's every couple of months it comes to my door. And that is just a breath of fresh air. And I don't know, I think it started in Shropshire, didn't it? Somebody said.
I don't know.
I think Shropshire's cool. Just an absolute bed of change makers.
That's why I do what I do. People are like, I mean, I know I like to talk about the positive stuff, and we'll get to the positive stuff in a sec, guys. But like, I like to promote things. I like to talk about the good. I just spoke to a guy who's just started a taxi firm. Like, it's like, it sounds daft, but people like that hyper localization. That's.
Yeah, and you've had people on here who I am proud to say I know and I work with, and the likes of Phil Gittins, the likes of Phil Gillam, the likes of Dean Harris, the mayor. I keep whacking things today, sorry.
It's okay.
And I can't, the ARC, there's just so many incredible initiatives in this town and across the county. There's so much compassion and empathy, and there is spare cash. People do have a bit of money in this town, and they use that responsibly, and businesses that support initiatives and fundraisers and charitable organisations, people like Storage King who've given me free storage for 3 years. I mean, that is not cheap. Yes. And I could not do what I do without them.
Because I was looking at the partners on the website now, the people that you've got.
I mean, the Shropshire Cycle Hub, I'm a trustee on their group. They are changing the way things are happening around here for the environment, and...
what's Chalk,
yeah, they were an organisation in Oswestry that started working with people with mental health, weren't they? Who wanted to get... you're looking on my old website, aren't you? I was trying to think.
The purple one.
Yeah, they wanted to help people get into their own businesses or start work again. And I think I don't know, I'm telling you a little bit of what I think I know about them.
Put you on the spot. Hey, what's this?
I think it's merged or it's changed into something people design. Oh, I can't remember now. They're in Oswestry as well. Doing the same kind of thing. Working with people's potentials, giving them a hand, a lift up, and really that's what we do, as in the same way as a lot of these organisations do. It's those that have, helping those that haven't got yet to get what they've got. And so it's sharing resources, sharing funds, sharing access to opportunities, advice, help, guidance. It's that movement of an energy, and caring and So they were a great organisation who right at the beginning helped us out. A lady called Liz, who still helps the refugees out there in her own time. So, yeah.
I think that's amazing. Can we talk about sort of Shrewsbury and kind of the refugees around that are here? Do we have refugees? Because you guys work with them closely, right?
Yeah.
What do you guys do with them?
So what we've done with them has changed over the years because. When I started out, I got asked to help. So someone from the council, they were putting together a team of cross-party representatives to discuss how they were going to resettle the refugees. We'd agreed as a country to bring 20,000 people over. And as a county, we'd agreed to bring over 20 families. I think it was 20 families. Or maybe 23 families. I can't remember. So I was invited to support Refugee Action, who had been commissioned to do the formal resettling for year one. And Refugee Action put together little welcome groups of locals to support the families when they've gone as well. And so I was asked to be a local support group for the Shrewsbury families that were coming. At the time, there was only going to be 3. And five families had already arrived in Oswestry, but I wasn't aware of that at the time. So I did my little collection. I did my rallying up my friends, and we collected stuff. And then I realised they didn't have things like televisions and, kitchen appliances that a lot of us take for granted that would have made it hard for them to recreate the food that they're used to eating. Mm-hmm. So I got them the funds to pay for them to have a TV, to have some extra toys for the children, things like food processors, chip pans, big pans that they use to cook, for the whole family.
Yes.
The things that they got from the resettlement team were the basics, but I thought, why not let them have some what may be considered luxuries? Why not? They've gone through enough. Who cares?
Give the kids a PlayStation.
Exactly.
Why not?
These mums have had enough to deal with. Why not make their lives as easy as possible when they're here? So we end up raising between £350 and £450 for each family that come, and I spend it on whatever they want me to spend it on. Even if they want a panini maker, I don't care. Have a bloody panini maker. I would want one. Yeah. So, and the money's coming from the people and the people who can afford it. So that's what we did. And then more families, I thought that was going to be it, to be honest, but then more families were coming and I was asked to do the same thing again. So we devised different ways of raising money and did some fundraisers and started to collect stuff at Storage King. So, and I'm not the first people that had done this, by the way. I got a lot of inspiration from hearing a lady on Radio Shropshire called Kate Badano, who'd done a collection of stuff for Calais and took a caravan down to Calais before me. And a number of local ladies that are now part of our group were helping her to do that. So I'm not going to take credit for being the first people that did anything with refugees in this county.
There was an inspiration there, yeah.
She inspired me because I remember hearing it on the radio and going, wow, she can do it, I can do it. And then that's what happened. So I've lost the track of what we were saying. It was something
talk about the families and what you guys do.
How we developed, yeah. And so once I'd done that for one lot of families, we did it for the next lot of families, but we also stayed in touch with the families and we found out that they really wanted people to help them to speak English, and they were getting a basic couple of hours a week English from the local authority sort of side of things, but they needed more and they needed practice and they needed friends. And so I was like very naive, but I just said, he wants to do a bit of that. And people stepped up and it worked really well. A lot of the people that got involved 4 years ago are still friends with the families now. They're proper good friends. They're not volunteers, they're friends. So I wanted it to be like that. I didn't want it to be really formal. I didn't want it to be, here's us and there's you and here's a form you need to fill out and,
so we can have a conversation.
Just wanted them to be friends. And I was quite lucky that nothing awful happened out of that situation, but I used my own discernment and I made sure that I did everything I could to know that the people that were doing it were good people and safe, and I have a background of working in care, and so I've got a kind of, that
The
risk
safeguarding
assessing, safeguarding
experience,
thing about me. So it's worked out well anyway. But now it's formalised because obviously as an organisation, we have to do things formally. So this was when I was a volunteer and I was doing it all as a bog standard person, not an organisation.
I love that. I want to get involved.
Cool, get on board.
I want to get involved because I've talked about my wife and the difficulties that she's had, and I mean, these guys have come from war-torn countries. I mean, what's it like for a family to come from somewhere where they used to like being scared, terrified, to come into somewhere like Shrewsbury?
Do you know what? It's a different type of terror. It really is, because the IOM, the International Organisation of Migration, do a talk on this. It's called culture shock that they go through. And it isn't just a little bit of isn't it different here? It isn't that. It is a real roller coaster of highs and lows, excitement, disappointment, expectations, reality. Then you get to, every part of their journey since the war started has been traumatic for them. So obviously being brought up in a country where war and disorder, and the government, you can't trust your own government. There's a deep distrust of any authority that they rightfully have gained through life, because in that country, if the police knock on your door, you're basically taken in and tortured until death, or until you're basically a shadow of your former self. They have no trust in any authority figures. And they then develop their own strategies and techniques to cope. And so they get very close to the people that they know. They don't necessarily trust outsiders. They don't trust even people that come from the next town sometimes, because if they had a different political point of view to them, they could be the reason why their whole family get murdered. It's when you can't imagine being in a country like that, can you? And living like that. But that's built into them from a very young age. So a lot of the people that have come over to Shropshire had to leave education at a very early age because of the war, or because of their culture. A lot of the women don't necessarily stay in school and for a long time. They leave when they're in their 13 or 14. Not always, this is just some. A lot of the men were forced to go out and work from the age of 9 for survival.
That's crazy.
So they don't have that necessarily. Obviously, Syria's a big country and there's lots of different areas, and some parts were more urban than others, and some parts were more rural, and different areas have certain traditions. And, there are parts of Syria that are very sort of, I guess, look a little bit more like one of our cities, and I think what happened, but I'm not sure, but I think a lot of those people from the cities that had quite a lot of money, that were educated that to a high standard, that had a lot of English or even German, got out early and went to places like Germany, who opened up their doors. I think that's what they were thinking as well. Those people are more likely to get back on their feet when they arrive somewhere. They're a little bit more kitted out for that. So there was, a number of people that ended up having to escape under bombing or under gunfire that night with anything they can carry and their family, and just run to the nearest border. So people ended up in different parts of the Middle East and ended up as refugees in Lebanon and Jordan and the likes of that, Egypt, Turkey. So those guys have already been moved into these positions where they're in a refugee camp. The refugee camps, like all of them, start up as a bunch of people collecting with no resources, no food, no water, no clothes, no shelter. And then I guess locals would have put that in place, and then the big NGOs would have moved in, and now you've got these giant camps in Jordan and Lebanon where there's millions of people living in tents. And some of our families were living in houses in Jordan and Lebanon because they just found work and they managed the best they could, until it got to the point where there were so many of them in those countries that the resentment builds up with the locals, and the jobs aren't there, and then the aggression starts and the social unrest starts. And then a lot of our families were faced with extraordinary racism and prejudice from those local people. So they tell me that Lebanon and Jordan was worse than Syria. because they were treated like dirt. And some of the things that they had to do to get food and drink and to get the rent for their homes were atrocious. There's people still selling their kidneys, selling children. And this is why people trafficking has gone so high, because it's so easy now to traffic people. No one's monitoring it. No one really cares in the powers that could do something about it don't seem to be doing anything about it. There was a figure like something like 10,000 children had their kidneys stolen in Turkish camps alone, because that's a form of currency now. Children are a form of currency. Wow. Sexual exploitation is a form of currency. Enslaving people is now an accepted part. Libya is a hotbed of slavery. It's where all of the Africans have to basically get through Libya to get out, or South Sudan sometimes. So that's where you're getting all these global trafficking gangs, treating them worse than animals, and most people don't get out of there alive. So when you see people from Africa that have come here and they've got here on the bottom of lorries, they've got here on those awful dinghies, they have experienced trafficking and abuse and violence and sexual violence and death. Every single one of the asylum seekers in this county would have seen all of that and then thought that they were going to die many times to get here to safety. And then they've usually ended up being in Calais, which is just as bad. So
I've heard horror stories.
The horrors that they've been through is layer upon layer upon layer. But then when they get to Shrewsbury, it's like, okay, now we can relax a little bit. But that's when all the trauma comes out. That's the mental health process that happens. When you're in survival mode, you're coping. When you stop doing that, it all comes out. So you're dealing with all of that, and then they're expected to be able to just slip into our ways and our systems that are so unrecognisable to them. They don't have things like we have over here at all, and the authority systems that are in place and the help.
Social services.
The education system's unrecognisable. I mean, a lot of the children that did get education over there experienced the horrors of camp education, where they were still using corporal punishment and humiliation. And the Syrians had to go into lessons after the Lebanese children got into lessons, and they were treated with such disdain that, a lot of the children starting in our education system were terrified to go in there, terrified, not least to sort of be separated from their parents in an environment where, you may never see your parents again.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff is not necessarily thought about until someone like me goes to those schools and says, by the way, have you ever thought this is what's going on? Because they don't know, and it's a learning curve for everybody. And so I find myself involved with services, organisations across the board. Anyone who works with these guys, we all work together, where I try and inform them and help ease the process, really, of integration. So it's a very complex thing.
Can I just say, I think you're amazing.
Thank you.
Honestly, the passion in the way you talk and the strength in you is just unbelievable.
I have this fierce lioness inside me.
I think it is unbelievable. It's so powerful, right?
Absolutely. That's why I joined Amanda.
Robert's been a blessing, though, because, one person cannot do it all. And I have been cutting corners in areas that need to be addressed. And Robert's come in and brought some order to my life. And so it's been a wonderful merger. And we are now in a position to be able to bring someone else on board to help that process and to put us in a position to be contract ready more for sort of local authority contracts rather than just grants, home office contracts. We're upscaling our education, so we're going to hopefully be immigration advisors at some point. And so we're trying to just fill a gap in the county, really. And I want as many people on board as possible. So
I'd love to help out.
Fantastic.
Away from the biscuit and away from the microphones, things like that. If we can, me and my family, if we could get to know another family and make them feel welcome, I like that. I really think that's cool. And Yeah, because it's such a. I always consider a refugee coming somewhere like Shrewsbury as this beautiful thing with the soap opera music playing in the background. But when you put it into context and when you talk about it, the trauma that they got to go through, and the mental health. Let's talk about the mental health a little bit, because what do you guys offer for someone that's been through, suffering from PTSD and probably wounds and mental health?
It's such a tricky topic, and it's my main passion. Yes. I'll be quite honest, and I've got a bit of a therapeutic background, so I only did anything I've ever done because I wanted to help someone feel better. I wanted them to feel welcomed. I wanted them to know there was a group of people around them that welcomed them, that wanted them here, even if they did come across people that didn't, and then the racism and stuff wouldn't hit them as hard, because they would know there was a group of people here that did want them here, So that was the whole reason why I did everything. And I have made it my job to research myself to death on trauma. And I knew a lot about it anyway from working with children in the care system. So you'd get a certain amount of training about trauma and how it affects people, how it affects the way they learn, how it affects the way they integrate with communities, how it affects how they think about themselves, how they behave. So I already had that underpinning sort of knowledge, did a bit of psychology at college and stuff. But this county, for no reason other than the fact that it hasn't really needed to,
take some pictures
is not really that equipped for dealing with the complex kind of war trauma that we're looking at. And it's not just war trauma. It's, like I said before, the trauma of resettling, the trauma of constantly being on the move, the trauma of never knowing when you're safe, when you're not safe, that ongoing layers of trauma, then the trauma of integrating into a society that is unrecognisable. I mean, we only have to imagine what it might be like to go and live in Syria. There's nothing really that close to our culture, is it? Learning how to deal with people, learning how systems work, learning who does what, who to go to for what, and then having to learn a language that is so far removed from your own. I can do a little bit of Italian, a little bit of German, a little bit of French, but Arabic, no way. It's so hard to learn that. Robert wants to learn it, don't you? To learn it, yeah, and I think there's a couple of them teaching people that want to learn, and just in a sort of voluntary way. But there's just so much. So mental health is a really interesting point, because, we've got our systems in the county that we think work for us. And so we've got this whole knowledge of mindfulness now, and self-awareness, and the stigma is being reduced, isn't it, now?
I think so, yeah.
Slowly. Much more authentic talking about how we feel. And, I'm going through some psychotherapy at the moment, which I'm finding fascinating. And I'm telling everyone I meet about it, because I don't think that there should be a stigma about it at all.
Not at all.
I'm doing something called internal family systems stuff, which is telling me a lot about myself and why I do things and how I tick. And I think I touched on the fact that I developed a bit of a nervous sort of condition over the years, and I'm not sure if I could put it all down to this work, or whether it was partly to do with my lifestyle beforehand, an accumulation of stress, overworking, whatever it is. But I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia about 2 years ago, and it shows itself in different ways and at different times, but basically it can just be utter pain most days, or it can be just exhaustion, or it can be mind fog, or it can be, and I do think I've probably got a bit of ADD in me there, and I think a lot of creatives do. That's the creative brain, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just a way of trying to work with the world, that you have to find a way that works for everybody. So I'm already interested in all of that, but then I've also been through that experience of having what is basically amounts to a dysfunctional vagus nerve in your body. Your vagus nerve controls all your unconscious systems, your breathing, your bladder, your stomach, and I've suffered from anxiety for most of my adult life, and coped with that through the usual Western way of drinking and probably a few naughty little things in my time. Just basically trying to appease that feeling of discomfort that you can't explain. and I've never really had what I would say was a traumatic childhood or anything like that. But I still realise that what I've been through, moving at a young age and all that sort of stuff, is a sort of trauma. You have to learn everything again. You have to start from fresh. Working with kids in the care system is traumatic. It's violent. It's scary. You get no sleep. You get into holds. You're very physical. You get attacked. I got attacked 3 times in the last year that I worked in that job, which is why I left. And that affects you. But especially in that environment, you're expected to pretend that you're calm at all times.
Professional, yeah.
And if you've got, if you're trying to talk down somebody who's kicking off and becoming violent or about to throw themselves off a bridge or run off and you can't find them, and you're having to pretend that you're calm.
Calm yourself down, so yeah.
Yeah, you're basically just burying all your stress and anxiety, and then you wonder why afterwards your vagus nerve is going, what is going on? And so you get symptoms, and sleep is affected, and if you're not sleeping properly, you're not healing properly. It's all so interconnected, and I could see over time through educating myself how I've probably developed this condition and what I need to do to fix it. Now, fixing it is another matter. So it took doctors and hospital specialists, God knows how many appointments I had and how many things I had scanned and blood tests and poked and prodded. And, when you've got headaches that last for months, you think, oh my God, that's it, I've got a brain tumour. You've got issues and you think, what could that be? And the way that our medical system works is it just basically works to a prescribed tick box system that doesn't really cope well with these new up-and-coming conditions that the world is having, all these autoimmune system issues that are suddenly coming out of nowhere, dementia, Alzheimer's, all these neural issues that weren't necessarily as prevalent as they are now. Our medical system isn't coping and our mental health system isn't coping with it. So we've done a great job in bringing mindfulness to the forefront and self-awareness and trying to break down stigma and educate people on how they can help themselves. But that has not been happening in Syria. That is nothing anywhere near has been happening. So in Syria, if you mention that you've got depression, you're basically at risk of losing work, losing careers. The way they term things, I'm tired. That's all you get. So, for all the things they've been through, you'll get, I'm tired. So-and-so's not coming today, she's tired. Well, that's code for depressed, ill, anxious, overwhelmed, because they don't have such a thing as talking about mental health over there. So we've had that cultural block to have to overcome to get them used to the fact that in this country we acknowledge trauma, they don't even have a word for trauma. So the way I tried to do it, I was a bit naive. I think I was a bit too quick. So in the first year, I got a lady called Caroline Rowling to do some stress management for them in a project that I did for 12 weeks at the Wildlife Trust, where I was educating, the parents were educated upstairs while the kids were being led by creative, artistic people doing work with them and having fun. So we did a 6-week stress management course, and to start with, they just didn't get it. They just didn't. And they were giggling and they were like, what is this? And some people dropped out, and the men refused to do it, point blank refused. And slowly but surely, I think some of the ladies did appreciate it and could see how it could help. And we had one lady say that she was teaching the techniques to her sister while the bombs were going off around her heads in Syria. So, we had some good stuff come from that, but I think 4 years later, it's a lot easier for them to understand now why I did that. And so I'm looking forward to revisiting that with them as soon as this stupid COVID thing goes away.
Does it help that when you get new people come over, if you have new people come over, they meet with the people that have been here for a while and they can sort of say, no, this is good?
Yes, they've trailblazed for them. So it's easier and quicker for them to integrate to our systems and our ways because of the fact that the people that were here before have done that first. So, yeah. So we did... Sorry, go on.
No, sorry. I was going to say social aspects and things like this. What do you guys put together so that you can get these folks together and let them have a good time together?
Well, I
know it's hard at the moment because
a lot of what we did with the research, I made sure I researched as much as I could, and I still do, and I network across the country and find out what other people are doing, and trailblazers in different parts of the country, and attend conferences and mental health conferences. And basically out of that, psychosocial support still is seen as the best way of helping these guys because it emulates the society they've come from, where people are in groups of women, groups of men, and they do things together like cooking or making stuff. So I started a men's group when I brought a trauma and resilience trainer in from Leicester to talk to them about what they're feeling and experiencing. That went on a monthly basis last year, and it stopped obviously, but we are starting up again. And with the women, we did a women's group, and they would get together every Monday in the Quaker meeting rooms and eat, drink coffee, chat. I would bring in sometimes someone to run a workshop with them, keep the kids busy. Volunteers would come in and we'd make friends and chat with them, and they'd drink coffee, and they would teach us Syrian dancing, and we'd eat their delicious food. So they were the good days when we could do all that, and I can't wait to get that started again.
Have you had to adapt to like Zoom and things like that?
It's just not the same, is it?
I know.
Yeah, we are trying.
I know. I just got my little boy back into Taekwondo, which is great. He hadn't been for about a year, about 18 months, because he was too tight. He was too young at the time. But we were chatting to the people that we used to see when we went there, and they were saying they were doing like on Zoom like training sessions, and they were like, it was amazing because it was one-on-one, but it's still go and see all the kids and being around that environment. Yeah, it'd be nice.
We're toying with starting our craft and chat group up again, only doing that online. So people maybe do a project together and then come together every week to talk about it.
What about the kids? Say you say they go to schools. Are there nurseries and things available as well, and how hard is it for a child? I don't know, 3, 4, doesn't speak English. Probably not going to be able to speak English for another year or two. The most basic
let me get you. Those children learnt English within 6 months.
Yes.
Really? That's
they
good.
will. They'll pick it up very quickly.
Nice.
It's more when you get to the sort of exam level and they go into school, their English language skills are very low, and they're dealing with technical information, and it's really difficult. You can imagine being in a GCSE class and not understanding what's going on because your level of English isn't good enough. So you're having, you've got that double whammy of having to try and learn English at the same time. You're expected to be able to pick up this information in terms of the exam system. And it is really difficult for them. It's really difficult at that level. And for the schools.
Very hard for them to know what to
Absolutely.
do. So one of the things we did last year was collaborate with Concord College. Every year they've offered a lot of our students places on their summer school for the last couple of years. Shrewsbury School developed a homework club, so all the kids were going there, and peer-to-peer support was happening. That was great, wasn't it? But one of the examples of how we fill service gaps is that right back at the beginning, I realised that there was nobody in the schools to integrate the children in this scary, scary time for them. So we were very lucky to have a lady called Kariman Yakul, who came on board at the very early days, who was a TA. She was also from Jordan, so she spoke Arabic. So I managed to get her into those schools where the children were, and she would go in a voluntary capacity and help to support them and to ease that integration. And eventually, over talks over a year, we developed a role for her from the education department. Now she's the official Syrian resettlement coordinator in the schools. So those kind of service gaps we've been able to fill through the goodwill of the community and the people that speak Arabic in this county that have come forward and helped me out so much. So we can do these sorts of things. We liaise with the schools. We've got a couple of English teachers that we can engage with the children or the adults and give extra support to them. We're just always trying to think of creative ways of helping things, easing things, especially like Robert said, for the teenagers. So, we do things in the school holidays with them, family activity days. And we're going to be growing and developing all of our services over the next year, and things that we haven't had time to do, such as the City of Sanctuary project, which I'm so excited about, but I've never had the real time to initiate it, which is a massive network of people and organisations and businesses across the country. And I'm part of the City of Sanctuary group, and we network and we share ideas and we promote and share resources. And part of that is a section called Schools of Sanctuary, where you can basically go into schools and work with them on a portfolio. So they get a award at the end of it that says, we are a school of sanctuary and this is why, and this is the work that we've produced, and the talks, the discussion points and the classes that are based around the topics that are relevant, educating the children on not being afraid and integrating well with people from different countries. So
beautiful.
All sorts of
I love that
things.
you networking across the country and you guys are all chat.
Yeah, there's some exciting projects.
We did nothing but run down social media at the beginning of the show, but there are useful things that you can...
Definitely. It's all about filtering out the rubbish.
Yes. How can people get in touch with you and to sort of volunteer and help you guys? And what are you after,
Well, I mean, we're in the process of moving to charity status, we hope.
We will
be moving to charity status, yes. So we're a community interest company at the moment, and we'll be moving to what's known as a CIO, which is a charitable incorporated organisation. So we're in the process of doing that, which will provide a more structured approach to the organisation. We'll have a board of trustees, which will essentially be the governing body. And we want to sort of identify trustees with specific roles that are then supported by a volunteer role that has a particular focus. So that's all going on. We do have quite a large body of volunteers already. Some of that is somebody who might come along for just an hour or so, give an hour of their time occasionally to other people like myself. I'm a volunteer, but I work with Amanda at least 2 days a week, and probably more than that anyway. So what we want to do is grow the organisation. People can get in touch with us directly. Shropshire Supports Refugees. We're developing a new website, which hopefully will go live. When's the website?
Maybe even next week.
That'd
Very
be great.
exciting.
So that'll be a nice new website that people will be able to go on. We want to, and it's important for us, I think, as we move forward, that we develop our support for the refugee, for the volunteers as well. It's not only supporting the refugees, but supporting that volunteer base in being able to work effectively and develop their skills within that whole environment as well. So people can get in touch with us by.
So we've got a Facebook group where we basically it's a closed group. And it's... Don't apologise.
I'm taking pictures. I always do it. I mean, I take pictures as people go. Yeah.
So the Facebook group is a closed group, and it's designed for local people, really, and also a lot of the refugees are in there as well. And that's where we do our requests, and I update people on what we're doing a lot more, and they can offer services or get in touch, and... we've got a new office in town now in Swan Hill, 17A Swan Hill, so they could just pop by and hope that we're there. Yep. They can also contact us eventually through our new shiny website. And I think it's just a case of I feel an obligation. If somebody comes to me and offers help, I will find a way of facilitating that one way or another. However, the reality is we haven't resettled new families for a year. So we have less and less need for face-to-face stuff at the moment, because the ones that have been here for quite a while don't necessarily need that now as much.
They've had that integration.
But we are fully expecting to continue to resettle people through the new UK Global Resettlement Scheme, which is opening it up to other parts of the world. I don't know what our county's committing to yet, but when they do, we're going to be there to help them. And so then we will be able to really engage volunteers with a lot more stuff face-to-face. But for now, what we're going to be doing is seeing if any of the volunteers that have approached us so far, we are well aware that we are behind in responding. So because we're doing so much organisational stuff at the moment, it's just a case of time, really. So when I've got the time, there's at least 10 people waiting to be having a conversation with us. And we're going to be asking them about other areas of their skill sets where they can maybe be on a more organisational basis helping us out until such time as we get the new families through. And then they'll be in place to do the face-to-face befriending.
It's a case of just keep in touch, because there's going to be new opportunities opening up for you to be able to help. I was going to ask you something, and it's gone. This is exactly what I was going to ask, and I'm glad I remembered it, because I think it's important. What would you say to people that are listening to this going, it's a load of toff? I can't believe, what was it talking? Are there communities where people can actually join and learn about this sort of stuff? Do you know of anything?
I mean, I have a Facebook group.
Apart from yourselves,
I have a Facebook page where I post articles about the global situation, and I promote other people's projects. And so if you look for us and like my Shropshire Supports Refugees Facebook page, you'll see maybe projects that might interest people. When you mention talking about it, do you mean debating, discussing? No,
more like being around people that's going to offer context, because that's really important. When it comes to like the comments on, I don't know, a Shropshire Star article about something, it gets quite nasty. I wouldn't ever encourage that, because that can become quite toxic. But like when you're surrounded by people that was like, no, actually, like we used to think exactly the same. Yeah. And we had this conversation when we went to this thing, and we actually learned as well. So like, we appreciate, because there are, like what I said at the beginning, like there are people that don't understand, so the only way they know to react is to be defensive. Yeah.
Well, this is our awareness raising side. So we've always had that. I'll always do a talk for anybody that asks me to go and do a talk. I do talks in schools, houses, churches, WI groups, similar. Anybody wants me to talk to them about what they can do, what we do, and the global situation. We will do that. And stuff like the City of Sanctuary and the Schools of Sanctuary projects will bring in opportunities for people to get engaged across the board. And also, there's loads of projects that I nearly started, and then because of time and COVID, never got off the ground. So stuff with the local university in Shrewsbury, just really inspiring discussions with David Clark, where we were going to start like a social group for young adults, an international social group. We were going to merge it with Concord and Shrewsbury School. Phil Gittins was going to get involved. There was all this stuff going to happen. I know. And then obviously COVID occurred, and everything else got really busy, and it was more crisis and firefighting really for me. So I'm really looking forward to being in a position next year to be able to roll out a lot more of this awareness raising opportunities, discussion opportunities, educational opportunities, opportunities for people to get involved or even start their own projects. If anybody ever sees something and they go, I'd like that, but I don't know, we don't do that in the county, then I would really encourage them to get in contact with me, and I'll help them to do it. Because there's all sorts of little fundraising and awareness raising things that are going on across the country, and we can easily emulate things like that, and I can help them and support them. I don't want to be the only source of refugee and migrant information or help in the county.
The more people that are doing it, the
better. The more the better. Yeah. So, people like the Ellesmere Sculpture Park, they did this amazing project last year, and it accumulated this, like, September, I think it was, where they had this garden that they'd opened by the lake in Ellesmere, and there's this beautiful statue that was commissioned of a refugee child underneath a little wooden house, and a labyrinth that was commissioned that gives you the experience of being a refugee. So you're just walking around and coming to dead ends and coming to people, making you go back. So a little place like Ellesmere is doing amazing things. There's some stuff going on in Oswestry that I'm really impressed with. There's stuff anywhere in the county. Anyone who wants to do something can, and then we will help them, support them, facilitate that, put them in touch with people, market it for them, raise awareness for them. We'll do what we can, really.
And Refugee Week is an important date in the calendar. I mean, Refugee Week, condensing something into a week, but That's a really important awareness raising event. Again,
it's
this
a
year
national
it had
event.
to be virtual, but it can be accessed, can't it?
This year we had to make it virtual, but a wonderful woman called Nikki Holmes developed us a website called shropshirerefugeeweek.org.uk.
I saw that. Yeah.
And that is just full of all the offerings at that time that the creative people in the county wanted to make. So we're going to build on that every year, and also hopefully do live events again.
Yes,
and we've got this amazing book that got produced. A guy called Paul Francis produced a pamphlet with all the poems that were developed for last year's Refugee Week. And some of the local artists have illustrated some of them, and I've got a box of those in my office if anyone wants them. They're about £4, and we can, I think, Paul will send them out in the post as well, so you can get in touch with me about that. But little things like that can be made, art can be made, exhibitions can be held, books can be created. There's so many ways that it can all happen, and it's a lovely way of doing it as well, isn't it? So yeah, that's there's never no ending to how many different ways we can raise awareness and educate and have an opportunity.
Can I just say,
tell.
I am so happy with this interview.
Thank you.
Honestly, you've inspired me so much. You're just such an amazing speaker. I've got something about real strong, independent people, passionate about what they stand for. And I've been so lucky to speak to yourself, Dean Harris. Who else? Michelle John from Pegs. Even Phil Gillam in his own way, because he's very calm. He's very happy, and he doesn't really get angry, but yet he's just this pillar of support for the town,
He's a fine example of what you need. You need people like me do a certain role, but I would not necessarily be very good at mediating in a group of teenagers that need to learn how to develop skills in conflict resolution, I'm probably not that great at doing that, but he's brilliant at it. So there's someone for everything, isn't there? Yeah. And I think I've really had to go through a personal process doing this, because I've never run a company before. I've never even been a manager before. I came out of school with 1 GCSE. I've not been academic. I've dropped out of college courses till I'm blue in the face. I've worked in the end in the caring professions, because that's what I was passionate about, whether it was disabled children or kids in the care system. I was a deputy once in a care home, but really no experience of running an organisation at all. So you can find yourself on a day-to-day basis going, I can't do this. Who am I to do this? What am I doing sitting around the table with these people? Developing services in the county, Yeah,
but you're a natural leader as well. I mean, who else is banging the drum? Who else going? But you're doing that. You're the one.
I'm not sure I'm a leader. I think I'm just a really enthusiastic person.
Where people are flocking towards you, and because of ideas you've had, you're a natural leader.
Oh, thank you.
Believe it or not, you're a leader.
But I'll tell you what, I'm not a very good people manager. So when we're trying to develop ourselves into a formal organisation, I'm having to recruit people and have people on board like Robert and the people in the world that can do that really well, so that I can carry on.
Book. Because I'm used. I always explain to people, like, I'm the same. I'm exactly the same, and I'm like, all I can do is sit in front of a microphone and sound good sometimes.
But not many people can do that, so that's your role, and that's
exactly.
What I think. Standing in your power is acknowledging what you're good at and celebrating that, and trying not to beat yourself up for not being able to do all the other stuff. So,
which is why I got in touch with Chris Goff, who I'm speaking to at the moment. He's helping us become a CIC, because we feel what we're doing for Shrewsbury is important.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
To get funding so we can have our own studio and our own stuff, and not have to. I want people to take it seriously. So yeah, but big shout out to Chris Goff from CGR Business Solutions Limited. There's a sneaky little advert there. Nice. But he's a great guy. I can't do it. I can't do all that sort of stuff. So
I've just brought in a HR company. I've already got an accountant, but I've just changed them. We've brought in an IT company. We're bringing in an admin person. Because I've basically got 4 years of admin to catch up on.
You should get some mics and do some podcasting. Seriously,
Yeah,
people would be interested in hearing the stories of these people, the trials and tribulations they've been through, the traumas.
Yeah.
People would love that.
Yeah, no. That, funny enough, though, they don't want to talk about it.
Well,
Can you blame them? It's reliving all that hell on earth, So there might be a time when they do want to, but right now, not the case. But so many exciting things are happening in the future that I'd like maybe an opportunity to come back and talk to you about.
You're welcome back anytime. Come back tomorrow if you like. I enjoyed this.
When I feel like I've caught up a little bit from this last year, the stuff that we've got ahead of us next year is so exciting, and I'm pulling together a group of conventional and complementary medical people, so doctors, rheumatologists, GPs, and then holistic therapists, to try and create a realistically accessible pathway for healing for people that have had extreme trauma, which doesn't exist in this county at the moment. So we've got certain services in place, but helping people to engage in those is one thing. The other thing is the cost of getting better. So I've told you I've got fibromyalgia. Well, I manage that through a number of different ways that cost a lot of money, and they are not accessible for most people, especially people on benefits. So my idea is just to get some funding through the door from mental health funding pots, and develop that pathway. So when that's a little bit more come to fruition, I'll come back and tell you about it.
Well, maybe we can share notes. I've spent a month speaking to spiritual healers, convergence healing, and all sorts of the whole month working with TV Guestbert over in New York, and they were sending me people to speak to. I'll share you some of the links to the show. Honestly, this guy that I spoke to, Peter Bedard, his name was. He was a found dancer whose body got destroyed in a car crash, and Western medicine helped put him together, but it didn't help him heal. So he had to learn how to meditate and certain teas to drink and certain ways to exercise and to put his body back together and to deal with the pain and things. So I've been on a journey of discovery.
I'd love to know more about that, because that's what we're talking about, and it's new innovation, it's new ways of thinking out the box, it's new treatments, it's new discoveries, and I hate to say it, most of them are coming from America, like you said, but I make it my absolute job and hobby to be constantly watching stuff about it.
Well, he said he knows someone from Ireland, actually, that might be able to help. So that's a bit closer. So I'll give you his details after this. You guys have been fantastic.
Oh, you've been great as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So the website, let me know when the website's up and running. We'll share it
the new one. Don't go to the old one. It's outdated. I haven't touched it for 4 years. It's my fault. I haven't been updating it. So it's there. But the new one's going to be a bit more.
To the listeners listening as well, I want you guys to give these guys a follow, give them your support, and if you are hard of understanding of what's going on, just join the site, the Facebook page, listen to what people have got to say, and try and open your mind a little bit. I would love to encourage people to do that, because you've got, once you have the understanding, I'd love to take people for a week to Syria. Let's show you what these guys are living in. Let's do that, because
you can apparently get a virtual reality game, or it's a program like a documentary on virtual reality that will let you walk through Syria.
Oh,
I mean, that is going to be an eye opener. I don't know. My friend told me about it the other day.
I've closed my book, but I did make a note.
Sorry.
No. I did that. I don't know why I closed it. So, but I wrote Jack Ryan. It sounds a weird thing, but I watched the first series of Jack Ryan on Amazon with John Krasinski at the office. Amazing, because it's all based in Syria. And it's about this warlord whose family have to run away, and Jack Ryan has to go and find them and make sure that they're safe, because they're going to testify against this warlord. And like their journey across Syria, and they get to the beaches where all the people are getting put on boats, and the trauma and everything. That is one of the most.
I haven't watched that.
I would absolutely recommend it, because
I have to be careful these days. I can't watch too much traumatic stuff. It makes me into a gibbering
But it's got John Krasinski. He's a bit of eye candy. So. It's brilliant though. It is really good. It is quite intense. But I like that because it's not some American. I mean, I know it is American, but it's also some American movie that shows America kicking ass. It's a very real show that displays very real situations.
It's getting a bit better over there with the way they make films and things, isn't it? One of the things I'd like to do when I get a bit more time is put together the opportunity for people who really don't understand to have a coffee with somebody that has been through it, a lived experience.
Perfect.
And so, I think it's one for the pot that I'm going to be dipping into next year, but I think that would
maybe
be
we can
really
do it over a podcast. That'd be cool. A more real situation would be better. But thank you very much for joining us, guys. Listeners, I hope you really enjoyed that episode. I know it's been a bit longer, but if you've got any suggestions, comments, you want to get involved, please, you can get in touch with us for the website, actually, which is www.theshrewsburybiscuitpodcast.co.uk, and that's very lovingly made for us by our friends at Web Orchard. If you need a website, go and check them out. Also, this episode has been recorded at the Parade Shops, which is behind St Mary's Church. Beautiful shopping centre. Lots going on here. It's very bright, very colourful. If you want a cupcake, go see Crystals. If you want to go for a nice coffee, there's the River View. You want to take your kids to go and paint pottery, there's Splot and Splodge in the corner there. And of course, there's us as well.
It's the most excellent vegan shop in here.
There is Michelle at the Vegan Hub. She's awesome. She's great. She'll look after you if you're vegan.
And the Japanese shop.
Set in a Kai across the way. Yeah, this place is amazing. Thank you very much again, guys.
Oh,
it's been awesome.
Cheers.
Yeah, we'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.